There comes a moment in every life when the running must stop, a moment when the footsteps behind you grow louder than the excuses within you. We spend years fleeing from our fears, our failures, our memories, believing that distance will save us. But my friends, nothing you outrun will ever release you. Freedom does not live in the sprint, it lives in the courage to turn around. And today, I want to speak to the part of you that is tired, the part of you that is ready, the part of you that knows deep in its bones that the chase ends the moment you decide to face what you've been running from. This is your turning point, your invitation to meet your fear eye to eye and claim the life waiting on the other side. Your life does not move forward until you turn around and confront what's been chasing you. And that truth, as simple as it may sound, is one many of us spend years avoiding. We walk through life pretending that moving fast is the same as moving forward, that keeping busy is the same as becoming better, that silence means healing and distance means deliverance. But the heart knows. It knows when you are running from a wound that never closed. It knows when you are carrying a regret that never softened. It knows when the shadow behind you belongs not to the world, but to the pieces of yourself you never learned to face. And there comes a day, just like this one, when your heart whispers, "Enough, turn around." When you finally turn, you may tremble, you may shake, you may fear the weight of the very thing you've been avoiding. But you will also notice something extraordinary. What chased you was never as powerful as what lives within you. Fear grows in the dark, doubt grows in the distance, pain grows when we refuse to look at it, but the moment you face it, truly face it, it begins to shrink. You breathe, and suddenly the nightmare you imagined becomes nothing more than a memory waiting to be understood, a lesson waiting to be honored. You realize that the monster in the shadows was often your own unspoken truth asking you to listen. Each step toward the things that scared you becomes an act of reclaiming yourself. You are not meeting your fears as a victim, but as a survivor. You are not confronting your past as a prisoner, but as someone finally ready to walk free. When you turn around, you are not turning back. You are turning toward the strength you forgot you had. You are meeting the parts of yourself that have been knocking on your door for years, asking to be acknowledged. And with every breath you take in that moment, you shift the story. You refuse to let running be your rhythm. You refuse to let fear be your master. You refuse to let yesterday steal one more sunrise from your life, because the truth is, you deserve to move forward, not in circles, not in shadows, not in silence, but in fullness. And fullness only comes when you stop the chase. Your life opens the moment you do. Opportunities that hid themselves suddenly come into view. Relationships gain depth. Your decisions become clearer. Your heart feels lighter, not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you meet it. You are no longer being pushed by fear. You are being pulled by purpose. So let this be the moment you stop running. Let this be the breath where courage finds you. Turn around, face what has followed you, and watch how your life begins to rise. Not because the chase ended, but because you ended it by standing tall, standing still, and finally standing in your truth. You cannot outrun your shadow, but you can outgrow it. And that is the secret many people never learn, because they spend their whole lives believing that if they move fast enough, far enough, or stay distracted long enough, the darker parts of themselves will simply disappear. But shadows do not vanish because you refuse to look at them. They fade when you rise tall enough, wise enough, healed enough to outgrow the things that once controlled you. The shadow is not your enemy, it is your mirror. It shows you where you've been, what you've carried, and who you once believed yourself to be. And if you are brave enough to stop running and simply look, you will see that it has been trying to teach you, not torment you. Growth is not loud. Growth is not always graceful. Sometimes growth is as quiet as admitting the truth you avoided. Sometimes it's as painful as letting go of the person you used to be. You may find that the shadow you feared was made of old stories, stories someone told you about your worth, stories you told yourself about your limits, stories built from moments when life bruised you. And yet here you stand, breathing, living, rising. The shadow cannot hold you the same way life once did because you are not that trembling version of yourself anymore. You are unfolding. You are becoming. You are learning that a shadow is only proof that there is light behind you. When you begin to outgrow your shadow, you stop apologizing for the weight you used to carry. You stop blaming yourself for what you didn't know back then. You stop shrinking to make other people comfortable. You stand a little straighter. You speak a little clearer. You choose differently. You start trusting yourself again, maybe for the first time in years, and slowly life shifts. The things that used to break you no longer reach you the same way. The doubts that once drowned you are now whispers you barely hear. You realize that nothing outside of you has changed. It is you who has expanded beyond the places that once trapped you. Outgrowing your shadow means outgrowing old fears. It means understanding that fear will always walk beside you, but it does not have to lead you. It means understanding that your past will always be a part of your story, but it does not have to write your future. You begin to see yourself with kinder eyes. You extend compassion to the version of you that survived days you never thought you would. You start honoring your journey instead of criticizing it. And the more you grow, the smaller your shadow becomes, not because it disappears, but because you have learned to rise above it. You cannot outrun your shadow, but you can outgrow it. And when you do, you stop living in the echo of who you were and start stepping into the truth of who you are becoming. That is the moment your life begins to change. That is the moment you finally meet your power. Turning around is not surrender. It is the birth of courage. For so long, many of us have been taught that strength is only found in moving forward, in pushing through, in refusing to look back. But there is a quiet, unshakable power in the moment you stop running and choose to face what stands behind you. That is not the act of someone giving up. That is the act of someone finally ready to rise. When you turn around, you are not bowing to fear. You are inviting truth. You are not submitting to weakness. You are summoning bravery. And bravery does not always roar. Sometimes bravery is simply the decision to stop pretending you are unhurt, unmoved, unafraid. It is the choice to acknowledge your scars without letting them define you. There comes a time when the weight of running becomes heavier than the thing you are running from. You feel it in the tiredness that settles into your bones, in the nights when your mind refuses to quiet, in the moments when your spirit whispers that the chase is no longer about survival, but habit. When you turn around, you interrupt that pattern. You create a pause in a life that has been ruled by avoidance. In that pause, you start to see clearly. You start to breathe deeply. You realize that what you feared was often magnified by distance, by imagination, by the stories you built in the dark. Facing it allows you to finally see it for what it truly is, not a giant, but a doorway, not a punishment, but a turning point. Courage is born when you accept that you cannot heal from what you refuse to face. Turning around means daring to look at the truth without flinching. It means meeting the parts of yourself you've ignored, the disappointments, the choices you regret, the memories you tried to bury. But instead of crushing you, these truths begin to set you free. They lose their power when brought into the light. They stop chasing you because you are no longer afraid to meet them. You realize that surrender was never the answer. Presence was. Running was never the escape. Honesty was. And the moment you face what frightens you, your resilience rises like a tide that cannot be turned back. In turning around, you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your direction, you reclaim your life from the grip of past hurts. And suddenly, courage is not something you wish for, it is something you embody. You stand taller, not because the world has grown kinder, but because you have grown stronger. You speak with conviction, not because your fears have vanished, but because you've learned you can walk through them. You begin to understand that real power comes from confronting the things that stole your peace and daring to build your future anyway. So, no, turning around is not surrender. It is the moment your courage takes its first breath. It is the moment your spirit steps forward, not in fear, but in certainty. Certainty that the life you are meant to live will never come from running. It will come from standing, facing, rising, and choosing once and for all to meet your destiny with open eyes and an unshakable heart. The chase ends where self-awareness begins. There comes a moment when you finally recognize that what you have been running from is not always the world outside of you, but the world within you. You start to understand that the fear, the doubt, the confusion that seemed to chase you through every season of your life were not strangers. They were your own unspoken truths calling out for your attention. And the moment you choose to listen, everything begins to shift. Self-awareness is the doorway through which the chase loses its power. It is the light that makes the shadows fall apart. It is the calm voice within that says, "Look here. Understand this, heal this." And when you understand yourself, you no longer have to run from yourself. In the stillness of self-awareness, you discover things you never noticed before. You begin to see the patterns that kept repeating, the choices that kept hurting you, the expectations you kept carrying even when they no longer belonged to you. You learn that the chase was never just about escaping something painful. It was about avoiding something true. But truth is not your enemy. Truth is your compass. It brings direction to chaos. It brings meaning to confusion. And once you see the truth of who you are, not the version shaped by fear, not the version shaped by old wounds, not the version shaped by voices that didn't believe in you, but the version shaped by clarity and honesty, you begin to walk differently. You walk with intention instead of urgency, with purpose instead of panic. Self-awareness invites you to question the stories you've been told about yourself. It asks you to challenge the belief that you are not enough, not capable, not worthy. It encourages you to ask where those thoughts came from and why you allowed them to follow you for so long. And when you confront them, they begin to loosen their grip. You realize that many of the things you feared were rooted in misunderstandings. Misunderstandings about your strength, your potential, your voice. You begin to understand that you were never weak for struggling. You were only human for learning, and learning is not failure, it is transformation. Through self-awareness, you learn to hold yourself with both honesty and compassion. You admit where you went wrong, but you do not punish yourself for not knowing better then. You acknowledge what you need, and you forgive yourself for ignoring it before. You understand that growth does not come from perfection, it comes from truth. And when you begin to live in truth, the chase ends naturally. Fear loses its leverage, doubt loses its foothold. You no longer need to outrun anything, because nothing inside you is being denied anymore. The chase ends where self-awareness begins, because self-awareness teaches you to meet life from a place of understanding rather than avoidance. It allows you to stand in your experiences without hiding from them. It gives you permission to evolve, to heal, to become someone your past self never imagined you could be. And once you know yourself deeply, you do not run. You root, you rise, you move forward not because you escaped something, but because you finally returned to yourself and found the courage to live with clarity, with intention, and with a heart unafraid of its own truth. What pursues you is often the lesson you prayed for. Life has a way of sending us teachers dressed in the very experiences we try hardest to avoid. We ask for strength, and life sends trials. We ask for wisdom, and life sends confusion. We ask for clarity, and life sends moments that force us to choose who we truly are. And though these lessons may arrive wrapped in discomfort or wrapped in pain, they arrive because somewhere within you, knowingly or unknowingly, you ask to grow. You ask to rise. You ask to become more than the version of yourself that once felt small. The things that chase you are not always punishments. They are invitations. Invitations to evolve, to awaken, to reclaim the parts of yourself you once abandoned. When you realize this, you start to look at your life differently. You begin to understand that every challenge carried a message. Every setback held wisdom. Every heartbreak reminded you of your capacity to love deeply. The situation you ran from was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. And sometimes the lesson keeps returning, keeps knocking on your door, keeps circling behind you, because you have not yet learned what it came to teach. Life is patient like that. It will repeat the lesson until you are ready to rise above it. And when you are finally willing to turn around and face it, you discover that what pursued you was not a threat but a teacher waiting for your courage. There is a moment when you understand that the pain that followed you was trying to sculpt you. It was carving away the doubt you held, the fear you carried, the excuses you lived behind. It was shaping you into someone capable of stepping fully into your own power. Growth often comes disguised as discomfort. Healing often comes disguised as resistance. The blessings you prayed for sometimes arrive in forms your patience has to unwrap. And if you run from them, you miss the wisdom they carry. But if you face them, you begin to see how every difficult moment was preparing you for a level of strength you didn't know you possessed. Accepting the lesson does not mean you celebrate the pain. It means you honor the purpose it served. It means you recognize that without certain storms, you would never have discovered your resilience. Without certain losses, you would never have learned your worth. Without certain endings, you would never have opened the door to new beginnings. Life arranges itself in ways that challenge you not because you are weak, but because you are capable of more than you've allowed yourself to believe. And the moment you embrace this truth, the chase changes. What once felt like a burden begins to feel like a guide. So when something keeps pursuing you, when a memory repeats, when a fear resurfaces, when a pattern returns, do not see it as a curse. See it as a lesson that refuses to leave without offering you its gift. See it as life saying, you asked for growth and growth has arrived. What pursues you is often the lesson you prayed for, and once you learn from it, once you accept its wisdom, it no longer needs to chase you. It becomes part of your strength, part of your understanding, and part of the wiser, braver, fuller human being you are becoming. When you turn around, you stop being the hunted and become the hunter of your destiny. There is a powerful shift that happens in a person when they decide they are no longer willing to be chased by the ghosts of their past, the opinions of others, or the fears that once dictated their every move. Something inside you stands up. Something inside you says, no more. And that moment is not merely a mood or a burst of confidence. It is a transformation. It is the moment you move from reacting to life to directing it. You stop living in defense, constantly protecting yourself from what might go wrong, and you begin living on purpose, seeking out what can go right. You stop hiding from your future and start pursuing it with intention, with clarity, with a fierceness that surprises even you. When you become the hunter of your destiny, you no longer wait for life to hand you permission. You no longer wait for the right time, the right circumstances, the right people to validate your dreams. You take responsibility for your direction. You begin to understand that your destiny is not something you stumble into. It is something you build step by step, decision by decision, refusal by refusal, refusal to be small, refusal to be silent, refusal to let what happened to you decide what becomes of you. You reclaim the pen that writes your story, and you start writing with courage instead of caution. This shift does not come from perfection. It comes from awareness. It comes from realizing that fear chased you because you never turned around to confront it. Doubt followed you because you kept giving it room. But the moment you choose to stand still and look your fear in the face, it stops growing, it stops leading, it stops controlling you, and in that moment, the power you thought you needed from the world begins to rise from within you. You feel a strength that was always there but buried under years of hesitation. You feel a clarity that was overshadowed by noise. You feel a determination that no longer asks whether you are worthy. It knows you are. Becoming the hunter of your destiny means going after the life you want, not because it is guaranteed, but because it is deserved. It means showing up for yourself every day, even when doubt whispers and fear lingers. It means chasing your growth with the same intensity you once chased approval. It means moving toward your dreams even when the path is uncertain, because the alternative, standing still or running backward, is no longer a life you accept. You understand that your future will not come knocking. You must walk toward it. You must claim it. You must chase it like your soul depends on it, because in many ways it does. And the beautiful truth is this: once you take on the role of hunter, life rearranges itself. Opportunities that hid from your uncertainty begin to reveal themselves to your courage. People who doubted you fade into the background, and people who align with your purpose step forward. Doors you didn't even know existed begin to open because you are finally standing in the energy required to walk through them. You are no longer running from your life, you are running toward it. When you turn around and stop being the hunted, you become unstoppable. You become intentional. You become powerful in a way that cannot be taken from you, because it was forged inside you. This is the moment you choose to lead your life instead of being led by fear. This is the moment you become the hunter of your destiny. Every fear loses its strength under the light of your attention. Fear grows in silence, in the corners of your mind where you store the things you don't want to face. It grows in the spaces where you avoid the truth, where you distract yourself, where you pretend you are fine even when something inside you is trembling. But fear is powerful only when it remains unexamined. The moment you look at it with honesty, the moment you name it, the moment you allow yourself to recognize its presence without judgment, its grip begins to loosen. Fear is like darkness. It seems overwhelming until you bring even the smallest light to it. One moment of awareness, one breath of courage, one honest look, and suddenly the thing that once chased you begins to shrink. We often imagine fear as a force meant to break us, when in reality, fear is simply a signal that points toward the very place where our strength is waiting to be awakened. It shows up when we stand on the edge of something meaningful, something transformative, something that requires us to stretch beyond who we have been. But instead of walking toward it, we retreat, we doubt ourselves, we hide behind excuses. And fear grows larger, not because it is truth, but because it is fed by our avoidance. The longer you look away, the bigger it becomes. But the moment you face it, with trembling hands, with an unsure heart, with imperfect courage, it begins to unravel, and you begin to rise. When you give fear your attention, you do not empower it, you disarm it. You begin to see what lies beneath it. Maybe it isn't fear of failure. Maybe it's fear of being seen. Maybe it isn't fear of loss. Maybe it's fear of unworthiness. Maybe it isn't fear of the unknown. Maybe it's fear of stepping into the version of yourself that no longer fits the expectations others placed upon you. And when you see the truth behind your fear, you see yourself more clearly. You realize that the fear was never a wall standing in your way. It was a veil you needed to lift. And once lifted, it reveals a path forward that was always there, waiting for your courage to catch up. Facing fear does not mean you stop feeling afraid. It means you stop letting fear make your decisions for you. It means you walk forward with trembling legs but an unshaken spirit. It means you understand that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move despite it. Every time you confront a fear, you reclaim a piece of your power. You reclaim a piece of your voice. You reclaim a piece of your life that fear once tried to control. And with each confrontation, you grow stronger. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become braver. When you shine the light of attention on fear, you begin to understand its purpose. It wasn't there to stop you. It was there to show you where you needed to grow. It was there to point you toward the next chapter of your evolution. It was there to guide you, not hinder you. And once you recognize this, the chase ends. Fear stops pursuing you because you no longer run from it. You meet it, you question it, you learn from it, and in doing so, you rise above it. Every fear loses its strength under the light of your attention because your attention is not just awareness, it is power, it is clarity, it is the steady flame inside you that fear cannot extinguish. And when you choose to shine that light, even for a moment, the darkness that once controlled you begins to fade, and you begin to step into a version of yourself that fear can no longer follow. Healing is not in the running, it is in the returning. There comes a time when you can no longer outrun the ache that lives quietly beneath your ribs, the memories you pushed away, or the truths you buried just to make it through the day. You reach a point where distance stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like loneliness. You realize that no matter how far you go, pieces of you are still waiting in the places you left behind. Healing asks you to turn back toward those pieces, not to relive the pain, but to reclaim yourself. It asks you to return, not to the hurt itself, but to the part of you that was hurt, the part you abandoned in your effort to survive. And when you return to yourself, even when it hurts, you begin to mend in ways running could never allow. Running keeps wounds open because it keeps them untouched. You cannot heal what you refuse to feel. You cannot grow from what you refuse to face. And for a long time, it feels easier to move fast, to stay busy, to hide behind noise, hoping the pain will decay on its own. But pain that is ignored becomes a weight you carry everywhere. It becomes the silent thread woven into every decision, every hesitation, every fear. Healing begins when you pause long enough to listen to what hurts. Not to judge it, not to suppress it, but to understand it, to honor it as part of your journey, to acknowledge that the version of you who suffered was doing the best they could with what they had. That kind of returning is an act of love, perhaps one of the most courageous acts you will ever take. When you return to your truth, you invite clarity into the places where confusion once lived. You discover that many wounds you feared were unbearable, simply needed recognition. Many feelings you avoided were not there to drown you, they were there to guide you. You start to see that pain carries wisdom, and within that wisdom is the map you need to move forward. Running kept you lost. Returning begins to show you the way home. It teaches you that healing is not a moment. It is a relationship with yourself, a willingness to sit with your own heart and ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" And when you ask with honesty, you find answers you didn't expect but desperately needed. Returning does not mean going backward. It means going inward. You are not returning to old mistakes. You are returning to the understanding they offered. You are not returning to past heartbreaks. You are returning to the strength they planted in you. You are not returning to sorrow. You are returning to the compassion it carved into your spirit. Healing comes when you allow yourself to gather all the parts of you that were scattered along the path of pain and bring them back into wholeness. It is in this gathering, this gentle reclaiming, that your heart begins to feel lighter. And slowly you realize that returning is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is the brave decision to face the truth so you can finally be free of it. It is the recognition that everything you tried to outrun was never meant to haunt you. It was meant to shape you. Healing is not in the running. It is in the returning to yourself. to your courage, to your truth, to the life waiting patiently for you to come home. You rise not because you are unbroken, but because you choose to rise anyway. Life does not hand out perfect circumstances to anyone. There is no path that comes without obstacles, no journey that arrives free of pain, no story that unfolds without moments that threaten to stop you in your tracks. And yet every day, countless people rise, not because their hearts are whole, not because their hands are steady, not because their past has been gentle, but because they refuse to remain on the ground. Rising is not about perfection, it is about choice. It is about deciding that despite the cracks, despite the scars, despite the nights you thought you could not survive, you will stand, you will breathe, you will step forward, and in that choice, you reclaim your power. Choosing to rise is a declaration to the world and to yourself that your spirit is stronger than your circumstances. It is the quiet whisper that says, I am more than what has happened to me. Every scar tells a story of survival. Every tear speaks of resilience. Every failure holds a lesson that cannot be ignored. Rising is not a denial of your pain, it is a recognition of it and a decision to move forward anyway. It is acknowledging that the weight you carry does not define you, but your willingness to keep walking does, even when your legs shake, even when your heart trembles, even when the world doubts you. Rising becomes an act of courage, a proof of your unyielding spirit. When you choose to rise, you give yourself permission to rewrite your story. You no longer let yesterday's losses dictate today's possibilities. You no longer let fear dictate your choices. You no longer accept the idea that what happened to you is who you are. Instead, you begin to embrace the truth that life is as much about recovery, perseverance, and determination as it is about joy, success, and triumph. Rising becomes a habit, a rhythm of the soul, a repeated practice of standing tall in the face of challenges that once seemed insurmountable. Each time you rise, you solidify the fact that your spirit is unshakable, not because life is easy, but because you are willing to keep showing up for yourself. Rising is also an act of defiance against the parts of life that try to diminish you. It is a refusal to let despair claim victory. It is a refusal to let doubt or pain or failure convince you that you are incapable of more. Every time you lift yourself from the floor, you assert that your life belongs to you and that you will not allow anything, no circumstance, no person, no inner critic, to keep you from moving forward. In choosing to rise, you reclaim your narrative. You transform setbacks into lessons, obstacles into stepping stones, and pain into purpose. You understand that your value is not measured by how unbroken you are, but by how persistently you continue to rise. And in rising, you inspire others without even trying. People see your courage and feel the possibility of their own. They see your scars and understand that theirs do not define them either. You become proof that the human spirit is resilient, that the heart can endure more than the mind believes possible, and that true strength lies not in being unbroken, but in choosing to rise every time life tries to knock you down. Choosing to rise is your gift to yourself and your gift to the world, a declaration that no matter what has happened, you are here and you are moving forward, and you will rise again.